Welcome to the meeting of the Salto School District Board of Trustees. A recording and our broadcast of this meeting is being made at the direction of the board, and the recording and our broadcast may capture images and sounds of those attending the meeting. I will now take the roll. Vladimir Ivanovich.
Here.
Steve Taglio.
Here.
Jessica Spicer. Here. Ryan Johnson.
Here.
And I, Rachel Serki, am here as well. Alrighty, we have a special guest who's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, block student Drew BJ. Can everybody please stand? Go ahead, Drew, whenever you're ready.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Drew. Okay. On to agenda approval. Would any board members like to comment on tonight's agenda? Okay, then may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Motion to approve tonight's agenda as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Excellent. Motion passes unanimously. Closed session report. No action was taken in closed session tonight. Mr. Bear, Superintendent's update.
Yes, good evening. I want to, although we have already met him, introduce Drew VJ, who is an 8th grader at Block Intermediate School and has, I believe, been in our district since 1st grade at Oak. So welcome, Drew. We're happy to have you here. Drew was recognized last week as the middle school mayor for a day at the Mountain View City Council meeting. So I wanted to both congratulate him and welcome him. And Shelley, you want to say a couple of words?
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. So we're very excited to celebrate our LASD students when they receive such honors. And Drew's essay was chosen out of all the middle school essays for mayor for a day. So that's pretty exciting. I'm very proud of you, Drew. I know all of us up here are. Would you like to read your essay, your winning essay for us?
All right. I have lived in Mountain View for the entire 13 years of my life. I have benefited from being part of the socioeconomic and cultural diversity of Mountain View. If I were mayor for a day, it would look like any other day, but I would get a chance to highlight the resources that Mountain View has to promote this diversity. I would start my day by using one resource that Mountain View has to offer, the Mountain View Community Bus, which is a great form of sustainable transport. I would go to the downtown Castro street meets. There, I would experience people from different backgrounds and income levels supporting the local small businesses and feel part of the community. People would be able to enjoy the fresh air and delicious food while staying safe amid this pandemic. Next, I would highlight the Mountain View Teen Center. Here, kids of many backgrounds could participate in activities all for free. They can play video games, sports, table games, and even learn how to cook in the large kitchen there. Not to mention, they're able to meet new people and make friends. Finally, I would highlight the affordable housing in Mountain View. I realize that many people that work in the city don't get to enjoy the city they work in. A personal example that I've experienced is with my teachers. Many of my teachers live in different cities than Mountain View, and people could benefit from knowing the affordable housing options in the city. This would result in more socioeconomic diversity in the city, which in turn would result in a more diverse and charming city of Mountain View. In conclusion, if I were mayor for a day, it wouldn't look much different, but I would be able to highlight the many resources that Mountain View has to offer.
Thank you. That was really well done, Drew. And I have to say, I especially appreciate you thinking about your teachers and the affordable housing. And I hope one day you are mayor of Mountain View. Would any of our board members like to say anything to Drew? Jessica?
Sure. Drew, that was an amazing speech. I only wish I could give such a speech at your age. And I really thought your insight was better than a lot of adults. So, really appreciate your understanding of your city and your surrounding area coming out of an 8th grader. congratulations on such a great speech and being selected as the mayor for a day. Good job.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, Vladimir?
Yeah, I just want to say that you hit on a number of topics that I think we all think about more or less every day. The cultural diversity, the different backgrounds, transportation, affordable housing, things like that. And it's good to think about those things because they have a direct impact on our lives, the quality of our lives. So thank you for mentioning it.
Yeah, I'm really impressed that he thought about those things, given that he's only in for the.
Really the economic diversity piece
Yeah.
is often a real focus, and makes a lot of sense, plus just the whole green economy approach. Good
Yeah.
job.
For sure.
I second all of that.
Well, I know that Dhruv has swim practice tonight, so before I let you go, just tell me, what is your favorite stroke?
Probably freestyle.
What is it?
Freestyle.
Okay, very good. Well, you get on to swim practice, young man. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're
Thank
really
you
proud
for
of you.
having me.
Of course. On to the consent calendar. I don't think anything else is gonna quite match up to that, but we'll do our best. Any board members, would you like to provide comment on the consent calendar? Okay. Then may I please have a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar as presented?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. You have a second? Thank you, Steve. Motion to approve tonight's consent calendar as presented was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Excellent. Employee requests to address the board. The Los Altos Teachers Association, Kate Schermerhorn.
Hi, good evening. Happy Monday. Last Friday was an exciting day and we've successfully made it through Halloween. It was wonderful to see students so excited about their costumes and the opportunity to connect with their friends and cheer each other on in their school parades. There was so much creativity and joy in the air. As we head into November, our students and teachers continue to demonstrate their resilience as we continue to adapt to our shifting environment. Right now, teachers are in the midst of fall conferences. They are working hard to communicate and connect with families regarding student progress and goal setting. In addition to supporting students towards their academic goals, teachers are also working to support students' mental health and to balance their own mental health. Teachers appreciated last week's teacher-directed staff meeting and the time provided to shape our work to best support our needs and the needs of our students. We look forward to tonight's updates. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. I believe we don't have anyone from the California School Employees Association.
Elena's here. I'm not sure if she's speaking on behalf tonight. No? Okay. Nope.
Okay. To provide public comment on an agenda item, members of the public should use the raise hand button if using the Zoom app, or press *9 if using your phone. Your name will be announced when it is your turn to speak. Prior to providing your comment, please be sure your microphone is on. Requests received after public comment begins will not be accepted. So this time is reserved for citizens and employees to address the board on items that are not on the agenda. The board is not permitted to discuss or take action on non-agenda items, except to instruct the superintendent to review the matter further, report back to the board at a subsequent meeting, or place the matter on a future agenda. The board may make a brief comment or ask clarifying questions. If any member of the public would like to make public comment, please raise your hands now. Okay, seeing no hands, I'm going to close public comment. On to our action and discussion items. Assembly Bill 361 update on remote public meetings.
Yeah, just this is coming back to you. We discussed this last month, and in order to continue to meet in the format we're meeting, the board will have to reaffirm its position every 30 days. So I bring this to you for that decision and to take action around this affirmation if the board board does want to stay in this format. I can confirm that there is still a state of emergency declared in the state of California, and there is still guidance from Santa Clara County Public Health Department to meet virtually whenever possible for public meetings.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Jeff? Oh, Brian?
Has there been any public feedback about continuing to meet in this format versus?
I haven't
doing
received any.
I hadn't either, but.
Yeah. Okay. Would any member of the public like to make public comment on this agenda item? Please raise your hands now. Not seeing any hands raised, public comment is closed. Board members, any further comment? Okay. Then may I please have a motion to affirm the conditions of AB 361 have been met in order to continue virtual meetings of Los Altos School District Board of Trustees.
That's so moved.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Stevie. Motion to affirm the conditions of AB 361 have been met in order to continue virtual meetings of Los Altos School District Board of Trustees was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Motion passes unanimously. All righty. I've been looking forward to this for a while. Our mental health update. I'm just going to turn it over to you, Jeff.
Yep, so I want to, I'm going to hand over to Aaron in just a moment to do introductions, but we let the board know that we would bring to them an update on the Chat Back Together program that we are utilizing in the beginning of this year back in person, as well as give you some updates regarding just the mental health circumstances within the district. So, Aaron?
Good evening. I'm Erin Green, and I've been with here since tonight we're going to do two things like Jeff mentioned. First, we're going to talk about the successes and the experience for our students in the Back Together program. And Carol will be doing that. Carol Melker, who works with CHAC, and she belongs to Carol at CHAC. She used to be the director of school-based services, and now her full-time job is director of Back Together. So she's going to present on that in just a minute. And then following that, the special education director and Sandra McGonigal will partner together to share kind of the state of the district, what we're experiencing with our students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carol Miller.
Aaron. So I'm Carol, and I've been at CHAC for over 20 years. And in January, Marcia and I were talking about putting together a CHAC arts program and really looking at the possibilities of that, especially for school reentry. So I designed this pilot, and Jennifer and Aaron said yes back in March. And so the pilot is actually exactly what we're doing now for the whole district, and it's called the Back Together program. And as you know, it's an arts enrichment for healthy school reentry. I want to have a big thank you to the board for this time today and for helping to make this all happen. So what I'm going to do is go over the program, talk about the goals, the approach, the delivery, the CHAC team delivery. And then I have the LASD 6-week program highlights for you. Go over weekly sessions, feedback, feedback in class, students and teachers. And then with the help of Aaron, we were able to put together a Google student survey, which we'll look at the end. Also, I welcome any questions. And again, huge thank you. This is quite an endeavor to engage the whole district. So there's a big team, and especially Erin, who is a big team by herself. So the 6-week program engaged grades 5 through 8, and it was approximately 1,700 students, and that was August 23rd to October 8th. And right now we are finishing up the 4-week program, which launched on the 11th. And these are the grades TK through 4, and again, another 1,700 students. So the program review, so this is the back together. I wanted to just go over the goals. So we were prioritizing student mental health and well-being. Obviously, at this time, this crazy time of COVID insecurity and tremendous anxiety. So we really wanted to support the students and get them back to on-campus learning in a way that they felt good, and that, you know, we took a pause and kind of honoring this time. We didn't want to just go back as normal because it's not. So we've had the students engage in art and play, and this is really has research has shown this increases resilience, reduces anxiety, strengthens connections, and then increases focus, which is what we will want for students. And so this is by design. There's a tremendous amount of research right now, and each session supports the program goals of reducing anxieties and increasing resilience. The focus is on the process. So it's very, very much about self-directed, art-based work. It's not about the product. And there's a simplicity of materials and a repetition with crayon, paint, and paper. And that's it. So there's less tools and there's more about the process and exploring and making their sense of it, their own sense of it. So I just wanted to show this slide to talk more about free choice process, because there's a value of this self-directed work, and that the biggest part there on the left in the circle is it increases internal locus of control. And all of you have internal locus of control. You're not prompt dependent, you're leading. So that's what we want our students to have. They need to feel strong in the decisions they make. So when you give them a space to make decisions, it increases internal locus of control, which really helps them play, which then goes to an increase in self-esteem. So they feel confident, they feel positive, they start making social connections, and that goes to increased resilience, which is what we want right now, more than anything, is increased resilience so that the students can get through this time, because there are a tremendous amount of stressors and anxiety. So we want them to have this kind of resilience. And this happens in an environment where you create safety. So you can have an internal locus of control when they make a decision or they make a choice and you say yes, yes. And so each student's mark contributes to well-being. So every time they make a mark, that is a choice. So it's sometimes we don't realize how much is happening when a student is making a mark. And if they're safe externalizing of it, so marks come from the inside and get to the outside. This is called externalizing. And if it's safe for students to make a mark, then more of their insight will come to the outside. And we want this because there's a thing that happens with feelings like a log jam. If we don't get our feelings out, if we don't get our marks out, if we don't externalize energy or anger or other things, it gets all blocked up. And then when we have these log jams, then we don't have the focus. So we want this safe externalizing of internal states to keep flowing so you can go to the increased focus. And this is where we want our students so that they can learn. So they're calm, they're relaxed, and they can think and they can learn. And this was designed as a whole classroom experience because we wanted the whole system to work together, you know, so it's individual, but it's also as a whole classroom system. And so the students each completed a portfolio of self-directed works. And so there's over 40,000 works of them created by them. So in the program, there's a weekly directive, and then it's built on. So to support our goal, and our goal is to decrease anxiety and increase resilience. And the way we did this is they would engage in playful, fun exercise alongside classmates. So I love the visuals. So it's so perfect. They're doing exactly what we are designing, but we didn't tell them to do this. So they're confident, happy, creative, and hungry. I love that. So it's so creative. And then because of our long-standing relationship with Los Altos, we're able to use the chat delivery team, which is quite essential because we have therapists, we have MFT, PhD, PsyD interns inside a classroom, and then we have We have a lead therapist with other therapists in the classroom. So they know how to create space. They know how to be quiet and supportive and empathic. And so there's this nice, gentle conversation that's happening and sometimes nonverbal. So it just creates the safety. And as we talked about before, it also acts as, eyes on the kids program, because you have all these therapists in the classroom and you don't want anyone to slip through, so you want to just make sure we're looking at all the kids, because some kids are really quiet and they don't get seen, that maybe they need some extra support. And so what we do is we have, obviously the teachers are the people, they see the kids every day. So if we saw anything that, any observation, anything that we wanted to make sure the student was getting enough support, we would talk to the teacher. So this sort of, this program is a prevention program. And that was supported by what CHAC already has in place with LASD, with our intervention program of therapists on each campus. So this is new to reach more kids to support the other part that comes back. And there was actually quite a benefit for this partnership, is that we had all the CHAC therapists that were on the LASD campus. They were in the classroom, so then they got to meet 30 kids, 60 kids, 90 kids, and teachers. So this is the most integrated CHAC has been with LASD. Here are some highlights from the 6-week program. And so week 1, we would have a materials watercolor introduction, and students would try out the tools. And we just said explore, experiment, free choice, and they would play with colors, marks, images. And so there was a way to start with the scribble, because sometimes when you have too much choice, you could freeze a little bit. So in our quotes, no one's ever told me to do what I want. I don't know what to do. So sometimes it is hard to start when you just do this wide open, directive. So we did say, okay, try with this. So then they have the crayon and the watercolor. We started with the crayon. And so it just expanded from there. And I learned that your art doesn't have to be perfect. It can just be your unique art. So it was very much about the process. Sometimes we would say, just make a mess. And, like I was telling the principals, making a mess sometimes can turn into quite a beautiful piece. And then the second week, we had them do movement from the air to paper. So we just had them standing and moving their bodies and getting that back down into the paper, which is another way to externalize what's happening in the body onto the paper. And this is a freedom that happens. And so this really just moved a lot. And you can see in some of the drawings that we have a lot of color, a lot of movement. So, and it does help you get ideas. So that then the student knows that it can help you get ideas because you're moving and you're not frozen. Things come to you. So it's quite an interesting process. In our 3rd week, we did exploration using music. And this was definitely a favorite. Kids would start humming. It's just, start moving with the music. And we had music from classical to Disney. And it was just, sometimes they did have input about what music they would listen to. And it engages the senses in a way that they're right there. They're present, and present moment awareness. When you're in the present moment, you don't have past or future focus, so you don't have anxiety. And when you have these present moment experiences, you want to increase them. So that's what we want. We want them to say, oh, I need music right now because that really helped me. I didn't feel anxious. And then you start with one thing and then the music takes you somewhere else, more abstract, is one of the quotes. It's so true. So then we didn't say too much. And so the students could say more, which I think is very powerful because they have so much to teach us. And the 4th week we did, this is called crossing the midline, and the midline is in the middle of the body, and you're cross your arms, and then they bring that to the paper, so you're kind of doing a little bit of mixing a salad or something, and then moving it around. This builds the connection between the left and the right sides of the brain, and so what that does is also develop attention and then self-regulation. So it's calming, and then problem solving and creativity can happen. And this quote was, "I learned to appreciate the freedom to scribble. It gave me some brain refreshing to get on with the day." And the brain refreshing is that sort of self-regulation that happens. So you're starting fresh. The fifth week was exploring with numbers, and we had this one is using the number 2 as a swan, but using the ordinary object supports again free choice, and you can play with things that you see everywhere. So people were doing their lucky numbers, their birthdays, their parents' birthdays. They were doing their multiplication tables. I saw a lot of 9s, and so they covered it with numbers. There was huge variety here in the numbers. And so that I learned that numbers can be art, and it was beautiful. And the 6th week is the portfolio review. And this is really important because what we do is we gather their artwork for the 6 weeks. And so they, at the end, they get that all back in their portfolio, and they get to open it fresh. And so they in small groups would share their pieces. First, they would look at it, and they would share it with other students, and in just small groups, and they would say which one's their favorite, why, and were there any surprises. And then they would share that with each other, and then they could come up and tell the whole class if they want to share with the whole class. And we had some of the students asking the teachers to put it on the projector, to put it on the whiteboard. So the teacher said yes. So not only did they share their painting, but now their painting went huge. So it was really beautiful to see that kind of empowerment for the students to really stand there by their painting and share it with their peers. We also did one final feelings check-in, and all along the way, along with the directives, they would always, I'd have a feelings check-in. And the feelings check-in at first was sort of too abstract. They couldn't get it, but then we just explained it could be pretty much anything: a color, a flower, a shape, a face. And then they kept asking for the feelings check-in. Like, we didn't want to miss a day that they didn't have a feelings check-in. So they did a final feelings check-in, and then they're invited to take the portfolios, the paints, the crayons home as sort of a transition, because the final feelings was like closure, and then this was the transition, so they could take it home and hopefully continue if it works in the space. And we got a lot of information from the feelings check-in final, so I'm going to share some of that with you too. So, and they said I learned how to look over my paintings and drawings and answer different questions and prompts about my art. Showing my friends my drawings was really fun, and it was all very, very positive. So there was no critique or negative. They just shared what they liked. The other person listened, and then that person shared what they liked about their painting. And these are some of their final feelings check-ins, and this was for closure. So we asked them, how was this for you? And so we got a little Yelp review there. Awesome people, so much fun. 5 stars. And then on the left is I like chat art because they let me be free and insane. These are some really beautiful art pieces. And I love chat. It's the highlight of my week. I think it said it makes me more confident. And then from unknown, I love this one. Okay, I'm Lyra. It's just, and then the other one, I really liked it because it gives you freedom. It gives your brain a break. We also got teacher feedback along the way, and Erin's helping us get a survey out on Friday to all the teachers. But the teachers were happy we were there. They could see these children really needed this. Initially, I was skeptical, but after a few weeks, the room felt lighter, and the children seemed more cheerful. Some of the PE teachers in the middle school said, "Can I keep the supplies? I see the benefit. I want to keep this going." And some of the teachers joined in and did the directive with their students, which was very powerful. And one of the teachers made his own portfolio and then reviewed it with them in the end too.
That's
And I'm just going to pause here because I love these images of the paint sets. So you can see how you have the same paint sets, but so different what people do. So so on the right, you have a bowl of water and someone broke the crayons and put it in the water, which I just think is beautiful and individual and unique. So you could do so many things with these simple materials. And then someone else did the one to the left where it's a paint palette and there's beautiful, meticulous dots of color in there. It's just amazing. And then the next palette, you can see, it's almost like a piano. Someone just went with their paintbrush over the top. And then you have the order of the crayons and the paint. So it's just, there's so many different ways to do it, so many students, so many unique ideas. So with the help of Erin, we did a student Google survey. And this was a survey for the 6-week program feedback. And so the quotes on the right are also from the short answer that we pulled out. And there is a lot of information in this survey. So this is just a part of it. But I wanted to show you that we had 944 responses for grade 5 through 8, which is it. And then you have a pretty, a good number for each grade, good percentage. And there were 9 questions, including 3 short answer questions. What did you like best? Share something you learned, and anything else you want to share. And so some of those short answers to the right, something you learned was crayon plus paint equals awesomeness. And this is one of the questions we had was, how relaxed were you while drawing and painting? And 70% said very or extremely relaxed. I learned that art is something awesome to help with your stress. I learned that when you draw, you can calm or make yourself happy. Something that I learned was that painting the most random things can make you a lot more calm and helps you a lot. Another question we had about engagement. How engaged were you when you were drawing and painting? And 67% wrote very or extremely engaged. I liked the creative freedom. There was always a prompt that they let you interpret it however you wanted. I learned that if you have fun, that's a great thing. I liked how whenever you started drawing, you felt a sense of freedom. Another question about reconnection support. So how connected did you feel with your classmates in these classes? And we had 57% but very extremely connected to classmates. I had fun painting and chatting with my friends. I made a friend and another friend. I learned that my friend is going through a tree phase. I learned something about my friends by what they drew. I learned how relaxing it can be to just paint and talk. And this question was, did you feel this class was valuable in helping you to return to in-person learning? And 66% said yes, it was helpful for reentry. And the first one is, COVID was a jungle. I have had to become my own king and develop a secret language. I'm so happy to tell my story this way. I liked just being able to draw and paint without worrying about things. And I liked the kindness throughout the classroom. I really looked forward to coming into this class because I felt relaxed. It was like an escape from reality. Another question we had, if you were able to offer this program in the future, would you like to participate? And they said 75% were interested in the arts enrichment. And some of their quotes were, I learned that painting is such a fun and relaxing activity, and I will now do it more often. And I really liked how art was used as a way to help people socialize, bring people back together. I learned that painting and drawing makes me happy and that I would like to do it more often. I learned to expand out of my comfort zone. And this question was, would you like to meet with a mental health professional at your campus to do more feelings check-ins? So 38% were interested in more feelings check-ins. We have the maybe there, but we also have the yes. So it's very important when students say maybe, because there is some interest. And I was thinking that maybe we had, with all the feelings check-ins that we did throughout the program, that maybe it made it a little more normal to do a feelings check-in, which is possibly why we got such a big number interested in that. Some of the quotes where I learned of Shaq's existence, which is always good. And then they said, I learned that when you're mad, you can draw a painting instead of hurting anybody. I learned how good I am expressing my inner feelings. I learned that art is one of my new coping skills when dealing with mental health. And we are still looking over more of that information from the survey. There's a lot of information there. There's a lot of, writing in there too. So We are going to complete a 4-week program survey for some of the kids. And then we're also, as I said, Aaron's setting up a Google survey for the teachers. And then we're looking at what's next. We have a lot of kids, especially today, one 4th grade boy said, "Why is this the last day? Why are you leaving? This is working." You know, so they're so cute and they're very engaged and they want to keep going. So we are giving them the tools to take home when we're telling them about the chat counselor on the campus that is usually in their class, which is nice to make a little transition there. But yeah, we're going to be having more conversations about what is next. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions and thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, Carol.
Thank you.
Board members with any, before I do that, members of the public, if you want,
So, Shelley, can I just interject here? So this is broken into 2 pieces. Do you want to get the second piece, and then you can take the public comment and ask questions about?
Okay.
Rather than,
that
because
split
otherwise
it
you're
up?
going to have to.
okay,
request
okay, yeah,
more.
let's do that.
So our presentation is coming up. I just want to start by saying, that this brings to mind some questions of like, how are our students doing as they're returning back? And so we thought we'd put together just a few little slides just to kind of share with you our perspective from our teams on how things are in the sites. And I did just to note, I put a lot of information on the slide deck in the thought that as a busy parent myself, that some parents might not be able to be here today to watch this, but I'd like them to be able to download it and to see what we are providing at our sites to help students. So here's our little mental update. You see there's often really fun things happening around. We have therapy dogs, we've got yoga. All right, so when we were thinking about what would we pull together to kind of highlight how kids are doing, wanted to see what type of data we could pull. And so for the past probably at least 5 years, I've been taking data with our psychologists about each school site, how many suicide risk assessments do we do, how many of those go into hospitalization, what type of social groups do our psychologists run, how many kids are participating in that, and how many individual counseling students and then what type of other supports are we doing. So I went back and I looked through the past multiple years, and I noticed that on average, we average around 10 across all of our 9 schools. With about 10 suicide risk assessments. Our social groups that we usually put together with our psychologists start around the end of October, early November, and these are like friendship groups, kind of, how do we all get along together? We noticed some kids starting to have some challenges out on the yard, so we triage what would be the right supports for them. That usually happens around the end of October, early November. And then these are priorities. And then around this time, some of our psychologists are doing individual check-ins with students, really helping teachers put in those tier 1 behavioral supports in the classroom, building relationships, maintaining relationships in the classroom, building that classroom community. And that's kind of what's happening in general usually at this time. So now what's happening in the fall of 2021 is a little bit different. By last Monday, we've already done 11 suicide risk. And I would say that 2/3 of those have been emerging risks. So we already see an increased risk, and that's happening when a student is expressing harm to themselves. We kind of have a system that we go through to ask them questions to see what type of risk it is, and that kind of determines our risk. So we obviously see a higher intensity that kids are reporting to their teams. Our social groups started right off the bat in early September. We already identified some needs, and so our psychologists jumped in with some mental health check therapists, sometimes with mental health therapists, to start social group. Their anime group, the way one to really try to get some target kids coming in and try to support. We have conflict resolution happening at some of our sites. So these have already started, and in the past we would just be identifying. Additional supports that we're seeing is that starting off the school year, we had a lot of kids already within the first week getting a check-in, check-out with a psychologist, which is like a safe place to start, setting your goals for the day, and then checking in at the end of the day for some type of reinforcement, some type of encouragement. That's happening. So some of our students are seen twice a week with a safe person. And then you're seeing already a need for tier 2 behavior supports, meaning individual kind of behavior supports for kids with individual incentive. That's happening. So that was the data that I could kind of pull to kind of highlight how it's a little bit different this year than in years past. We knew this was coming, right? So we knew after COVID, like after the coming back, even though our students, a lot of our students were on campus, some of our students were not, and then we also didn't have, it wasn't a normal semester, obviously. And then families experienced a lot of trauma as well, so our students had trauma at home, whether members or just by the nature of having to be at their home and not being able to have the social situation. So we knew this. So we did a lot of things to prepare for this, to support our students. We hired 2 academic counselors at our junior highs, knowing there might be increased anxiety around academics and coming together. Or we have a school psychologist, a district office level school psychologist who's really supporting our mental health and our multi-tiered systems of support to really help re-engage students with academics and helping to with that monitoring, and then helping to support all of our kind of mental health things. We knew we were going to have increased behavior on the school year end. Kids weren't able to play like they used to in the past, and so we have a full year loss of social skills. So we started off the year with 3 additional behavior technicians to kind of help and float around. We have increasing studying for students who are out, and also increased safety needs. So really soon we realized that 3 was not enough, and so we were able to hire 3 additional. So we have a total of 6 additional kind of floating staff out there to kind of support with the idea that they can be able to start facilitating play at lunchtime or recess and at the different schools, and really be able to help some of those target higher needs safety issues that we're seeing. Each of our schools identified a social emotional learning programming that they were going to be doing, really targeted direct teaching of social skills. We already have responsive classroom in a lot of our schools. We have Project Cornerstone. These are wonderful, great programs. But what Sweet 360 and Second Step do is teach directly, explicitly the social skills needed. And they model it and role play it, practice it in the classroom so that they can generalize it. And so all of our schools have identified one of those and are working through it. We also have a family engagement facilitator who is helping to really engage and support that coming back into school and coming back into learning with some of our target populations. And so that's been wonderful. And then you just heard about the check. So these are things that we knew we put in place to support that social emotional. I wanted to let you know what they are. So knowing all of this, what's happening, right? So our school psychologists are pushing into the classrooms. They're doing some of that direct teaching, conflict resolution, social emotional, called zones of regulation, which is like a 5-point scale, helping kids identify that 5 points, where they're feeling, and what should they do if they're feeling over-regulated or dysregulated. So zones of regulation is happening. We're going in and teaching empathy skills and really helping in the general education classrooms. They are connecting with home and school, really building that partnership, our parents and our teachers for part of it. And so often we really need to be able to work with them on that, their students if they're struggling socially. And then really just in general supporting those anxiety related disorders that we're seeing a lot more, self-harm, eating disorders, school refusal. A lot of these are kind of bubbling up and more acutely at our times. And so our school psychologists our behaviorists. We are lucky to have an in-house behavior team, right? Our labs, Los Altos Behavior Services. It has been amazing to have, and even now more so to have these people in it, because we have BCBAs that help, which are board certified behavior analysts who help run the programming, and they do a phenomenal job training all the way to our behavior technicians on evidence-based practices to support students. So they are all coming in and supporting those high level of kids. We have kids running away from school because they're frustrated and regulated. We have a lot more safety concerns. Kids that might have been on our radar, we knew was safety. They've ramped up. We have an increase of SPIA and a need for one-to-one support. SPIA is a special circumstance instructional assistant. Special acronym, sorry. But so more and more students are exhibiting some safety challenges that are requiring an additional one-on-one. So in Los Altos, we've done a really good job of not really having that as a practice, but we're seeing because of the safety. allow. And then we're seeing increasing behavioral. We're seeing parents, even at the preschool level, saying my kid has been kicked out of 4 preschools, can you please assess him? And more, like, we get that every year, but we've had a way more this year. Our principals deserve a lot of love and recognition. They have been phenomenal. We have amazing principals. They have spent so much of their time on crisis control, really supporting students and families that are struggling. Their love is instructional leadership, and they have not been able to spend the amount of time that they want to on that for the start of the year, because they've really been working on just kind of writing mission. They are so involved in supporting kids and really working with parents, and it's taken a lot of their time. And then they're also there to be the social emotional support for their teachers. That is such a big priority for them, is to really support the teachers who can then support the students. And I'm going to turn it to
Excellent. So I thought it was important to share kind of our attendance patterns over time. And you might remember last year you saw the 2018-19 through 2021, and we had noticed an increase in attendance because much of that was virtual, especially when you think of our junior high students who remained virtual for a portion of their class. And we know that families were able to access that learning, and so our attendance was higher. But when you look at this year, when we're all back in person, we're really back to our fairly traditional attendance patterns. I do know we're seeing an uptick of some school refusal as well. And right now we're working on really trying to be able to clearly understand attendance when we think of our COVID and our need for students to be out because they're waiting for a test, or they are required to do the modified quarantine, or whatever that circumstance is. So we just met with all of the secretaries last week and are kind of putting in a new protocol to make it really clear what is a COVID absence versus just another more traditional absence, so we can work with more clear data. But overall, our attendance is kind of back to normal, I would say.
Right, and the last slide, Jennifer highlighted most of these. She was talking about the principal, but there have been many campus principals involved in just working partner. And you heard about the specifics that we have in place, and our principals have been one of those interventions that have really been an equal partner in supporting our students. So they're just very hands-on, they're on the ground, and if you go to any campus during the day, you will see principals interacting with students constantly.
Sure, we just threw up the graphic of CASEL, and I have to help me with the acronym. My acronym lady, social emotional competencies. That's how I refer to them. But we think of those different pieces. So we know if you look on the outside, it's so important that our home and schools are connected right now, especially when we're really trying to support students socially and emotionally, that our schools and our classrooms have those really solid foundations in place. And we've been talking a lot about this with our principal team and with teachers, that those tier 1 supports that sometimes in the past, perhaps we've just been so fortunate that our kids in the past have come to school and they're mostly compliant and they behave well. And so sometimes those good practices kind of, go into the wayside a little bit. So we're really bringing back that strong tier 1 practices, that we have routines in place, we have set expectations, we're teaching skills, and that we really can look at this wheel closely when we say, Steve is misbehaving, that we really have an opportunity to target what is the need. And we want to reframe that for teachers and our schools, that, what is the student showing us that they need, and do they need some teaching in a particular area? Do they need some reminders? Do they need some reinforcements? And so we're really kind of bringing out all those tools in our toolbox to make sure that kids can be their best selves and ready for learning.
I think the takeaway is that really there's this is a whole team support, like you heard from all the departments, right?
Yeah.
And we're all working together to really support the student needs. And in general, we do have a higher level of meetings with students right now, but we knew that, right? We knew it was going to happen and we planned for it. And we do believe it will take time. Students are settling back into school routine. You have to remember that intervention takes time. And so we do have interventions in place. We have more interventions coming through the year, but it does take some time and some patience to be able to work with students as they relearn how we do that.
Well, thank you, all of you. This was a great presentation. All right, members of the public, if you would like to make public comment, please start raising your hands. Board members, would any of you like to ask any clarifying questions? Esther?
Yeah, I just have a quick one about, you said that there, of the 11 risk assessments this year, they're mostly junior high. In two-thirds. Anyway, what is you said in an average year it's about 10 per year. Is it also usually mostly junior high students too?
It is more like a third.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
I think this is for Carol. You use the word marks.
Drawing. So when you take your pen and that's a mark. So mark
All right.
making is.
All right,
so
no, that I
stay
understand.
away-
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I stay away from drawing because a lot of people say I can't draw, but everyone can make a mark. So it could be a doodle.
I can't go. Okay, thanks.
All righty. Are there any requests for public comment? I don't see any. So I'm going to close public comment. Let's open this up for board discussion. Who would like to start? Sure.
First of all, one of the things I liked, again, on one of your slides, Carol, was confused rainbow. I thought that was great. Thank you all for what you're doing. I think it's really, really important. And I think my sense is that you have a good handle on what's going on. Don't hesitate to come to us for more support. A question about students not participating, or another sense is the students who are withdrawn, right? So I can see that you pick out students, obviously, who are behaving in ways they didn't behave before. But what about the students who are withdrawn? How does that, how do you identify those, or how do you get those to participate?
Sure, we're looking for them, right? So our psychologists and are working with teachers. Our teachers are super attuned. So they do know, like, oh, this student is not participating in social drama. Our teachers are doing a great job of kind of looking out on the yard and seeing what's happening and then helping us. And we have our psychologists and our principals out there also at their recess and at lunch. And so they're noticing if someone doesn't have a friend to play with or if they're not within a group. So we're watching and looking for that. That is absolutely a warning sign. And we might develop a club we have an anime club, and that was for someone particularly who is withdrawn. That's their one. So we're going to develop a club, bring some students in, try to foster some relationships.
Good. I think it was you who mentioned parents. Can't remember. You all sort of like look alike.
Part of the.
Yeah, there's one or the other. So parents are obviously key to all this. We have a facilitator, but that's one facilitator for the entire district, right? So how do we get parents to essentially participate in this? And I was thinking that there are two sort of aspects to that. There's participating with your own kid, and then possibly participating with other children. And I was just wondering, sort of how that process goes. How do we bring parents in? Because they don't normally do this now. They send their kids to school. This is different. What sort of extra things that you're doing differently now to bring parents in?
Are you referencing our facilitator, our that typically have the most number of underserved students. And what she's been doing is helping get kids to school who are having trouble getting to school. She's worked with families to help them get vaccines. She's worked with families to help them figure out how to get the testing when they're modified quarantine. So kind of bringing them up to speed on what's happening with what we're dealing with every day. I don't know if you were referring to like being on campus, because we don't typically have that many parents on campus. Right now.
Well, didn't we used to have parents sort of do yard duty and stuff
Yeah,
like that?
yeah.
So we don't have that anymore. because-
Oh, yeah, we do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of our essential
Yes.
function of a school, right?
It's an essential service.
My kids are out of LASD.
Yes.
Yes,
Like lunches
check.
or having family.
so I've lost contact with.
We did bring, that was an intentional change this year to really try and make sure we brought parents back.
Yeah.
There are parents still leading Project Cornerstone lessons, or parents for
Hot
lunch
lunch.
duty, for
Yeah.
hot lunch, so there definitely are still parents, and that email was a targeted decision to keep safety as first and foremost, but being able to reintegrate parents back into our school.
One last question has to do with painting or drawing or marking. And it seems that a lot of it was sort of individual. Is there a way to get either groups of kids or pairs of kids to sort of mark together? I don't know.
Well, I think that's a great question because it actually did happen. So we call that a collaborative piece. So they would sit next to each other and they'd start to take their piece together and then make it together. And then they'd have to decide whose portfolio to put it in. So there was a lot of collaboration. And then I also said, in art, it's no problem to copy because you're being influenced by someone else. So a whole table can be drawing a bunny and it's no problem. You could bounce off other people and that's how you get ideas. So there was a lot of collaboration that did happen. And sometimes they would be on their own page, but there's like the nice, gentle conversation that's happening between them because when you're kind of focused on something, you don't overthink it. So it's there's more ease that happens. So you're right, and there's a lot of collaboration that is happening. Yeah.
Picasso once said that artists borrow, but great artists steal. So I encourage stealing.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah,
we'll
not
fix
into the
that.
other subject.
Okay, that's all.
I think
Thank you.
Vladimir's dropped the word draw from his vocabulary. We're just gonna keep saying marks. I do have some questions, but I'll hold mine till let everybody else speak.
I just have one question about, you mentioned that you have multiple people in the room at a time. What's the average number of counselors to be in the room?
We try to have a 1-to-10 ratio. With the younger kids, it's more like 1-to-7. So they're just a little more wiggly, so we need more later. But usually it was like 1-to-10. With the middle school, at that huge room, we did have 4 or 5 because it got to be 40 middle school students, and you need to be there for all of them. So it was a nice way to still have make sure everyone's getting what they need and have easy conversations.
So I would like to say to your point about how interventions take time, Jennifer, I would love another update in whatever you think is an appropriate amount of time. I guess we're not surprised that the incidence of like conflict, conflict has increased. I'm assuming bullying is in that too. So I have a question. So I was thinking, yes, it's great the kids went home with like crayons and paints. But Cal, what do you think in your observation that the mental tools for coping and resiliency, what do you think kids went home with? I want to make sure that our kids beyond this program, when they go home, they may never touch that paint box again, or if they do, why is that? So,
Right, that's a really good question, and I think it's interesting because I think it was a little short. So I think especially for the 4-week is a little too short, but I think they did leave with the feeling that, this feels good, this helps, but it is hard to do that on your own. So giving it to them to take home, some kids will use it. And we did have one of the students in middle school, because a lot of the kids in middle school did not want to take their paints home. And so there was one student who went around and said, "Do you want your paints?" And they said no. Then she collected 10 of them and she told us that's for my mental health. So she was really good at this stuff. So there, it just depends. And some, some of the students really wanted to know more about the connection about, especially middle school, like, why am I doing this? What is this? And so they wanted the mental health connection piece because they are very informed. So I think some kids really could see how this benefits, this externalizing really benefits their feelings. They feel better. And I think for the younger kids, it's a little faster and harder. We're just coming to the end, so I'm just working on this, just reviewing that right now. But I think, I think it's just a start. It's a good start to honor that this is something different, and you're getting a little space before you jump into the curriculum. So I think it's really powerful what Los Altos School District did, because all of you did it very fast, and we worked very fast to get this in. So I think it's very important. It's a very important start.
I think I would love to hear when you've done the analysis of the 4-week program, like what you're finding out in our younger kids.
Yes,
This is
yes.
really good. Yeah, I was thinking, like, as you get older and older, you play less with crayons and paints. And I keep
Yes.
thinking back to that Zen room that our junior high kids kind of designed themselves. And it sounds like maybe we should put like paper and art supplies in there. Because I'm hoping that after this experience, they may go there and just do something. Because would you say that the kids felt more in control of the world around them? Because COVID has been a time where I felt it, that everything was out of my control. And it's
Right.
very hard to feel agency in that kind of situation.
Yes, and that, that anxiety does reduce when you're in the present moment and you're making all your decisions. It's on your paper. So it is like that quote about, this is my world. I'm making my own world to understand what's happening, what has happened. So it's very powerful to be able to design your own. This is a small world right here. So that's really, there's so much research behind it. So it does reduce anxiety and increase internal control, which is what we want right now. It's very much out of control.
I believe there are art supplies about the market.
Yeah, and
That's
Charlie,
good.
it is interesting, sorry to go back to the crayons, because crayons in middle school,
Yeah,
I did
exactly.
the pilot with 5th and 6th, so I wasn't quite sure, 5th and 4th. And so I wasn't quite sure, but when you present it in a way where you can break them, you can smash, it's like everyone responds to that. I can break them. So it was beautiful because you just transformed. Granted, some students said, wow, I feel like I'm in kindergarten, but it didn't matter. There were still a lot of laughs, and it's like, okay, I feel like I'm just doing it because they told me to make a mess with these crayons, and then the kids would take so many crayons in their hands, and it was just they transformed crayons into something for middle schoolers. So it was interesting.
Oh, that's awesome. And I'm curious, especially amongst the middle schoolers, as they're like working on their pieces. I know you're talking about the collaborative marking, but did you find that the kids were starting to talk to each other a little bit about what's going on with them? Or
Yes, actually, you could
That's-
see, tables of 2 students, and then one was saying, oh, what's the room from, and they're just both on their own page, but they're learning about each other. They were both new to the school. And then other kids, they took the watercolor and they painted their hands and their arms, and, as long as it was okay, we just let it go, and it was beautiful. So then there was this collaboration of mark making on hands.
I love that.
So there, it was, it was contained fun.
I don't think I have any more questions. Oh,
Yeah, just
go ahead.
one quick comment.
Yes.
The survey you did, just remember that it's self-reported data.
I just want communication, have we communicated with parents about why we did this, what this was?
Sorry.
Has there been any parent communication about what we've done, why we've done it?
Yes, at the beginning, we haven't done a post, but
Okay.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think it will help them understand.
It's a great follow-up.
Yeah, and why you might want to continue to sit in the home. Because I think a lot of our parents tend to be.
Could be some of the clips.
The more you can feel it was not a waste of time. I'm not
Yes.
worried about the thought process of very analytical people. So I think the fact that,
Yeah.
I think the anecdotes and stuff are.
And just so parents can support their kid, if they see them drawing and not feel like, what are you wasting their time drawing for, you know?
Exactly.
If they understand that it's part of their mental health toolkit.
I'm in the moment, and I'm not thinking about the
Right.
anxiety of the past or the future.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think that's very powerful because there's a lot of people that could use that, myself included.
Right?
Yes, so when you're in the present moment, like no past or future thoughts, then the anxiety is gone. Can you imagine?
I think that's why. those
That's what
adult
we're all
color
working for.
Right.
Wow. Okay. Any other questions for anybody? Well, that was really awesome, and actually, I feel very reassured. I didn't know what we were, of course, I saw the slides in advance, but I was just saying, in advance of this meeting, I didn't know what we were going to hear. So if we could hear a follow-up in a few
Okay.
months,
Yeah.
or whenever you think it's appropriate.
I can quick comment. This is the first opportunity that Jennifer and Aaron have had to be here physically with us. I just want to acknowledge and recognize the incredible leadership they provide. Really supporting our students and our teachers so that they can execute on what's going on out in the classroom. So thank you both.
We are very fortunate to have two amazing teams. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you, Carol.
That was great.
We're not going to stay for the presentation on pensions.
The actuarial tables? All right, next on our agenda, multi-tiered systems of support in LASD. This is McGonagall.
Alrighty, so this is a follow-up to our last board meeting when Mrs. Leach was here and we were looking at our spring data and some conversation around the students who weren't quite yet at benchmark and what are we doing. So I'm excited to come back to you today and really talk about our multi-tiered system of supports in some detail. So we spent a good portion of last spring meeting with principals, all of our principals, meeting with our instructional support teachers, chatting with teachers in the classroom and in the trenches, really about how we can better align our system. So not every school is having to figure it out on their own. So what could we really do centrally to support? And so these really are the four big areas where we put a lot of attention and work into since developing this past spring. So really this whole concept of system management, and we'll talk about in some detail our data walls and our concierge services. We have been mostly aligned around assessment, but really brought in progress monitoring into that fold. And our big alignment has happened on the bottom here around tier 2 interventions and our tier 3 interventions. And we're going to mostly talk about reading because that's where we elected to put our time and energy at the start of this year. But you'll see how that will grow as we move forward. So when we think about our aligned system and our assessment, we have screened this year all of our K-3 students with Dibbles, and Dibbles, I have to write it down every time, the dynamic indicators of basic early literacy skills. Dibbles is a well-known and normed universal screener for reading difficulties. So all of our K-3 students received a Dibbles assessment. We actually trained for the first time a cadre of our literacy aides and our kindergarten aides. We taught them how to administer the Dibbles assessment. We will continue to train them throughout the year in the hopes of really building a little army of folks who can go out quickly and efficiently and effectively screen our primary students in Dibbles. We also more informally screened our upper grade students with either the Fontes and Pinnell reading benchmark assessment or Literably. And something new we added to our system is what do we do with students who are new to our system? And oftentimes if kids don't start the year with us, we don't really get data on them for some time. And so we didn't want students to fall through the cracks. So we really have we worked with Bridget and her registrar's office and the secretaries to create a system. So we know when students arrive and when they leave. And that's all happening centrally out of our office now, which is great. So I thought you might be interested to actually look at our Dibbles data. So this was a real interesting look. You can see that we color coded. This is a Dibbles report for you. So obviously the red is the most intensive level. That indicates that they're not where we want them to be. Yellow is that students would need some strategic support, but not that intensive support level. Green is exactly where we want them to be, and blue means that we might even need to be doing some extensions with students. So when you look at our K3 students here, I wish we had this data from past years, and we don't. But I'm not surprised to see that kinder data looking like it looks. My guess is, and from reports from our kinder teachers, many of our students did not really attend a traditional preschool. They didn't have that traditional preschool experience. They might have had some experience, but students are not coming to us with their typical early literacy skills. So we have started this. I will be more than happy to come back because our students will be getting that middle and end of year Dibbles assessment as well. So we can really see whether or not all of our students, which is our goal, all of our students are meeting those benchmarks each year as we move along. So what's happening for students who are not meeting those benchmarks? So we have our spring data assessments, we have our newer assessments, and so I thought it would be easier for you to kind of see conceptually what are we doing, and it really follows this process. We're investigating, deciding, implementing, and we're progress monitoring. And so one of our big system pieces is this concept of a data wall. This is just a screenshot. All 9 of our schools have a data wall that and a concierge. So all of the coordinators in the curriculum office are serving as concierge, and they've been matched with a school or several schools. And we're also working with Claire Griffin, who's our school psychologist that Jennifer didn't name her, but kind of supporting our MTSS and mental health at the district level. So each of them has 1, 2, or 3 schools where they're really trying to keep this data wall up to date. What we heard from principals and teachers when we met in the springtime is the challenge of keeping the data current. That they collect data and they look at data, but then time moves on and we don't really have the bandwidth to progress monitor and there's so many different things happening. And now when you hear, our principals are spending so much time helping to manage behavior and mental health on their school campuses, we're happy to take on some of this responsibility. And we're partnering really closely with principals and those care teams at the school sites to help manage this data piece. So we have running data for students across our 9 schools. And once we kind of identify in our own color coded, we want to look at as many different data points as possible. That includes our instructional assessments that go with our units of study and all of the different pieces. We have to make some decisions. So if we identify students, we really want to understand which level of support is needed. So when we think about the tiers of support, we think of tier 1 as that good instruction that every student is receiving on a daily basis. All students receive tier 1. We then know some students might need some tier 2. And this could be a special small group that a classroom teacher pulls to the side. And so students in that tier 2 are getting the good tier 1 and then a little something extra in tier 2. And that's when we think of the color coding back in Dibbles, that would be kind of our yellow students. Should we want to make sure, and we're working directly with principals and teachers, that those students are receiving that tier 2 support. And then we have the smaller group of students who really need the tier 3 support. And that would be those students who were identified more in the red zone. And that's where it's much more targeted and really specific to what is the need. So as a team for each of our schools, we're working with the school teams to decide which students need which supports. And part of that decision, once again, is a little bit more streamlined. So when we think of those tier 2, those students kind of yellow, just under benchmark, all of our K-5 teachers now have been trained and have received the red binder. And the red binder is kind of a homemade but very evidence-based and research-based series of reading interventions. They've been trained how to use them. They include some diagnostic tools. They include some monitoring, more informal monitoring tools. And so all of our teachers know that they have this tool that they hadn't had before of the red binder. And it really supports classroom interventions from decoding. I'm just learning my sounds and words and letters and how they all go together, all the way to fluency. Can I read a passage with some fluency? That's really what that red binder is meant for. We also have another tier 2 support. You've heard of the reading fellows. Mr. Drummond and our mentor tutor connections last year worked together to develop this reading fellows program. Well, we are once again up and running at Almond, which is terrific. We have, I think last I heard, about 9, but in the queue can go up to about 20. So right now, every student in first and second grade at Almond who need a tier 2 reading fellow are assigned a reading fellow, which is terrific. And they're getting that daily systematic support from a trained volunteer. And they go through, I want to say it's either 6 or 9 hours of training before they get started and have a weekly check-in. Jill Croft, one of our ISTs, is helping to run that program this year. So some of our students just need some of these supports, right? Their classroom teacher is going to do some additional supports with them. Or their reading fellow or their reading fellow is going to give them some additional support. And then we have students we know who are more in that red zone and that they are further behind than where we hope that they would be. So we have purchased, thanks to our funding dollars around learning loss, a Sunday kit. I think it's technically called Sunday, but it just doesn't work with me. So a Sunday kit, which is a very systematic, multisensory approach to teaching kind of that phonics, decoding, phonological awareness, reading intervention. It's incredibly systematic. And all of our schools, our elementary schools, are already up and running with students in a Sunday intervention. We've trained classroom teachers. If they are the interventionists, we have trained instructional aides who are working additional hours to serve this need, which is terrific. And then for beyond decoding, when we hit that fluency and comprehension, we have LLI, and there's, I don't know, I want to say maybe 7 different colors of kits. So we've been able to purchase additional kits, get those out to the school sites, and students are, if there is a need, students are in that tier 3 intervention program. Also important to note that we allocated some additional staffing. So over at Almond, in addition to our reading fellows focus, we also hired a full-time reading interventionist, actually reading and math interventionist, who is supporting the students full-time over at Almond. And this year we moved up from 1 to 2 full-time interventionists over at Santa Rita to support their reading and math needs as well. And of course, we have a host of coaches who are also available to support both the tier 2 work that the classroom teachers are doing and to be supports for our intervention team as well. So we're really excited about that. So a student, we've identified they need it and they have a need. We've decided where they go. And then the next step is really to implement and to monitor their progress. So we know that interventions work if they're evidence-based. They work when they're done with some fidelity. So we're a little hardcore on the fidelity. We want 4 or 5 days a week. We want 30 to 45 minutes, depending on what the program asks for. And we want to make sure that we are tracking progress. So for our tier 3, more formal and systematic interventions, we've decided to use Dibbles across all schools and grade levels to be our progress monitoring tool. So whether you're in Sunday, whether you're in LLI, whatever, if you're in a 1st grade or an 8th grade class, you're going to have Dibbles be your progress monitoring tool. And they have great reports. I just did a quick screenshot for you. So you can see back in August, that kind of open circle was their starting score in this particular nonsense word fluency. And then every other week, we're doing a quick check of progress monitoring. So that first week, you can see the green trajectory. The 2 weeks later moved up. The gray band is where we want them to be, like what the benchmark is for that period of time. And that's kind of the trend line of how we hope to get them there. It's been so interesting. We're kind of right at this point of being 4 weeks into our interventions. And really already, as we were scrolling through today, the many reports, we're like, oh, this student is ready to go. They're like above the grade. They just needed a little something and they got it. And then that's a student that we will eventually exit and then continue to just check through the trimesterly Dibbles that they remain on trajectory. So that's really what it looks like in reading right now. Coming up next, well, I already talked about, we have mid-year assessment checks coming up, but we really want to make sure that our math is our next area of focus. So you know that we're implementing the math curriculum in TK5. So we've really wanted teachers to focus on that good tier 1 instruction. And once we get rolling, we've already identified our tier 3 systematic math intervention. We have tiny little pockets of where that's happening for students with really big needs. But that is something that we will develop. What does that red binder for math look like? And our coaches have been working on developing that as well, which is great. And we will continue centrally to just make sure that we have an eye on that monitoring for our next round of data that begins in late November, early December, when we reassess our students who are below the line. And then we go through the whole process again. Decide what they need, implement the program, monitor progress. Part of this, which I did mention before a student is entered into a tier 3 support, we are communicating with parents. That was part of the requirement. It's good to do it anyway, but part of the requirement for some of the funds. So they get a letter just stating that their child is below benchmark. We print out the Dibbles report for them and that they'll be participating in a tier 3 intervention at their school site. Here's who the person is who will be delivering that intervention. And at the end of 6 weeks, you'll get that nice report for your child. So you see the progress, hopefully, that they've made.
Tier 3 is typically outside the.
Typically, it's outside the school day, except for over at Santa Rita and at Ullman, we do have students that are getting pulled out at kind of less critical times, not missing first instruction.
The idea is that these students get both.
Yes.
We never want to take the primary instruction.
Absolutely, it is additive. So I am happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you so much. Members of the public, if you want to make public comment, please start raising your hands now. Board members, do any of you have any clarifying questions? Okay. And so we have one request for public comment. Just give it a second and see if we have anybody else. That's it. We can give for 3 minutes.
Hi, everyone. I don't need 3 minutes. I just have a quick question about the tier 2 versus the tier 3. If a student is in tier 3 support, so they're meeting with, my daughter is meeting with one of the instructional aides at Springer every 4 mornings a week before school as a first grader. Is she also receiving that tier 2 support within the classroom through the classroom teacher?
Sure, she is probably very likely receiving some of that tier 2 in small groups. She might not know that she's participating in it because teachers pull small groups throughout the entire day. But yes, I would anticipate that she's receiving that small group.
No other public, hands are raised for public comments. We're gonna go ahead and close public comment. Let's open this up for board discussion. Anyone want to start? Okay.
So first comment I have is I am extremely excited that you're excited about Dibbles because if I look at the manual here, I see that they talk about test reliability, standard error measurements, inter-rated reliability, concurrent validity, predictability. That is fabulous.
Yeah.
Because this is the only test that I know that we take, that we use, that has that kind of information. That is phenomenal. Do we have any breakdown by demographic groups?
Not in a nice report.
Okay, so you're already doing a lot.
Yes,
I don't want to take any time away to do some stupid report.
Yeah.
So the board member wants to hear about demographic groups, but eventually we will want to know something a little bit more about it.
yes, it was a loading problem when we loaded kids in. We didn't check the boxes. So we talked about we can manually go in and check the boxes, especially for students who are receiving that tier 3 support.
It's right now, it's fine, no problem,
Yep.
sometime in the future. So I was thinking about how would you evaluate the success of this? And there are 2 ways that I can think of doing, or 2 sort of like axes, if you want. The first one is students testing out. Sure. That you know that there's the more that the students test out, the more successful we are. Right. But there's also another one that I'm sort of hesitant to mention it because from what I see about Dibbles, I really like Dibbles. There's a question of Dibbles versus other programs. And I don't think we have that kind of information. Is Dibbles the best thing that we could do?
So Dibbles isn't a program, it's a screening assessment.
Okay, so I guess using Dibbles versus something else, we don't
Sure.
have a way of figuring out if that's the right way. There's no alternative that we're using. There might be some alternatives that, and again, I think that we can only do Dibbles. It'd probably be great. So I would push that, but there's something in the back of the mind. Is there something else?
So I think it's important to recognize too, Sandra, maybe you can speak to this slightly, that the Dibbles is being used to assess a very narrow swath of what we think of as reading, right? It's something very specific.
It is, you're right. But it's also the driver for a whole bunch of other things. So it assumes an importance that's perhaps out of proportion to its narrowness.
Yes, so it's a predictive screener. That's the reliability of the test, that it can predictively, accurately identify who may be at risk for a slew of reading difficulties. It's not the only measure we are using. So in our care team toolkit, all of our, and in the red binder, all of our teachers and our school sites have, I think the book is called Core Reading Assessments. It includes the PAST, which is a chronological something or other test. Kind of a slew of different assessments because we don't want to, this is just one measure. And when we get to that diagnosing part, we want to make sure that we're actually treating the right deficiency. And so we have additional measures to get there.
Sounds great. I'm really pleased to figure out what, just one final comment is that the parent communication might be scary to some parents. your child is.
Yeah, we worked on some wording around for, and some, the communication is important.
I mean, all I have to say is this is really, really, really impressive. And, you know, we've been wanting to use big data more granularly in the past, and it really looks like we're really getting there.
It's super exciting.
This is
I will tell
amazing.
you, we're all geeking out over it.
Well, we're all excited too.
Yeah. No, it was definitely coming out, how much the passion you have for this. It's really impressive what you have done and what your team has done. So I'm very thankful. And I have hopes that this will be what makes us really move the needle for the kids we have. No pressure.
Oh, believe it, it's self-imposed. It's out there.
Any other comments? I just want to express my thanks also and ditto everything Jessica said. Thank you so much for all the passion you put into this. It's not just the hours that you work, but it's all the passion that you and your team put into this. And I'm really glad that we did the mental health update the same day we did the MTSS update. Because even though they're kind of separate, they're not, and they impact each other. And I love seeing that sort of holistic, full-rounded experience that our kids get in a typical school day. So thank you for organizing it that way. But I don't have any questions. I did have a question, but you answered it in your presentation. So thank you so much. Sonia.
I'll just say Sandra did a fantastic job with this. I think she would quickly defer and say this is as a result of having a full, robust team working on CNI and not just a single person. Or a couple.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. All right. 10th site master planning update. Oh, there's me.
Thank you, Shelley. You can hear me okay, I assume. Last week, the Mountain View City staff presented to their council the proposed location for the city park on our 10th site, the location that we collaboratively came up with between the city staff and our staff and consultants. You had looked at that previously, a couple of weeks prior, and happy to report that the Mountain View Council unanimously agreed that the proposed location is the one and only best location for the park. So that was great and confirms what you had voted to earlier. So both agencies have decided to agree on that proposed location. So additionally, there weren't many comments regarding the location from council members, but they did have a number of comments related to the joint use facilities and basically looking ahead to that, which is our next step now that we've identified the location of the park, for us to start working on our campus part of the 10th site and working collaboratively with the city staff on the joint use facilities. So that was pretty much what happened. And if you have any questions, be happy to try to answer them.
Thank you, Randy. Members of the public, if anyone wants to make public comment, please start raising their hands now. Do you have any preliminary questions for Randy before we go? Okay. Are there any requests for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Would anyone like to provide further comment on this? Okay. All right, well, I have no further comments either. I know a few of us listened to the meeting, to the Mountain View City Council study session. So it's very good. It's very good to hear the discussion and know that we're in alignment.
And to check that box.
And to check that box, exactly. All right, thanks, Randy. Ooh, Randy, you're up again. actuarial valuation of retiree health benefits liability.
Yes, this is information only. There's no action required. You can go to the next slide, Marcy. And we do this every 2 years as required by state law. And the last time we reported to you, it was based on evaluation done in 2019. So next slide. You can kind of click the three times to get all the different options up there on the slide. There's actually click one more time. Yep. So there's different options of dealing with the liability. We do the pay-as-you-go option, as you know. We make annual payments. While it says without setting aside monies, the fact that we budget in our multi-year projections for future payments is kind of a way of setting aside monies for future payments. So going on to the next slide, Marcy. So this valuation, 2 years since the last one, there's fewer eligible retired employees. You can see near the bottom, 153 compared to 166. And the current employee number is down to 474 from 500. 3 of those current employees are eligible for maximum contribution, which means the maximum cost to us for the health benefits. And you go to the next slide. So those are people who were hired prior to 1988. And they're essentially eligible for lifetime, district paid lifetime benefits. All other employees will require what's called the PEMCA minimum, which is $143 per month. And that's under CalPERS, who is our medical plan provider. Next slide, Marcy. As you can see, the present value and the unfunded liability is a little higher than it was 2 years ago. And that's almost entirely due to a change in one of the assumptions, the drop in the discount rate. The unfunded liability, which you'll see in our annual financial report, is $18.4 million. And the present value, an estimate of what it costs in current dollars for future benefits, is $35.6 million. So let's go to the next slide. That's pretty much it. So this, again, no action required. And as I mentioned, the information from this report is used in our annual financial reports. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it back to you because I know this was a highlight of your night. So
Thanks, Randy. Members of the public, if you would like to provide comment on this presentation, please start raising your hands. Board members, would anyone like any clarifying questions on what Randy just presented?
I guess a quick one. At the end of the day, was there any surprises in this to you, Randy?
no real surprises. I mean, the change in one of the assumptions, but everything else is pretty consistent from prior years.
Thank you.
Would anyone like to make public comment on this agenda item? Don't see any hands raised, so I'll close public comment. Any further board discussion? Yes, but
Just one question for Randy. Are you comfortable with what's been presented? Or is everything cool? Technical term.
Everything is fine. We're on a good path to take care of these benefits as long as we make sure we're budgeting for them in the out years appropriately.
Thank you.
any other comments? Thank you so much, Randy, but don't go away. You're up again. Sharing of parcel tax proceeds with Boas Charter School. I will just read this really quickly for those of our parents in the audience who may not know. As required in Exhibit B of the 2016 Measure GG parcel tax, quote, BCS shall annually provide a written report accounting for its expenditure of parcel tax proceeds, end quote. Randy?
Okay, well, you took away my introduction, and because there wasn't much more to say than that, other than it is an action item. You have there the report from the charter school that indicates that their share of the proceeds went towards teacher salaries last year. And so it's just up to you to take action tonight, Shelley.
Thank you, Randy. Members of the public, please start raising your hands if you want to make public comment on this agenda item. Board members, do any of you have clarifying questions for Randy? Would anyone like to make public comment on this agenda item? Seeing no hands raised, I'm closing public comment. All right, any further comment? Yes, Vladimir.
So I find this report puzzling because a while back I submitted a CPR, California Public Records Act request for the names and salaries of BCS teachers, and I was told that they don't have that information. And I don't understand how they can then come up with the data that goes into this report if they don't know what the salaries of their teachers are. So I just wanted to bring that out in the open. The other comment I want to make is that this report has as little information as possible about the use of those funds that is consistent with the law. So it's leaves a bad taste in my mouth.
That, you know, what
Yes.
Vladimir said, have we ever asked the County School Boards Association or the county school board first floor group to look at this report in comparison to its annual financial report it gets from the charter school? Is the oversight committee, what I'm asking for, is there ever a comparison back and forth? To Vladimir's point, it kind of stands alone and it echoes, it's always echoed, it's kind of like, what is it showing? We have no clue. It does, to his point, report as it's supposed to. It would be nice to have the county step in and provide maybe a little color about how it fits into the reporting overall.
Okay, Randy and I can dig into that a little bit. Randy, do you have any initial comment on that? Did you catch that?
Yeah, I caught that. No, I think you and I can look at that and talk, figure out what to do.
Any further discussion before we vote?
I just can reiterate that it does meet the requirements.
It checks the box.
It checks the box. But yes, we don't have all the information. That is interesting that your CPR rate request, that's information we have to get. That, we think that also too. And I agree with Steve.
Well, we still have to vote, though we don't have very much information. We still have to vote. So may I please have a motion to determine that Bullish Charter School has spent their Measure GG proceeds according to what is required by Measure GG?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. Have a second? Thank you, Steve. Is there any further board discussion? Okay. Motion to determine that Bullish Charter School has spent their Measure GG proceeds according to what is required by Measure GG was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. It is the Randy show. Randy, you're still on.
And I was
Appointments.
going to say, I appreciate the fireside chat opportunity.
You need to put a fire in that fireplace.
Working on it.
Okay, our next agenda item, appointments to the Measure and Citizens Oversight Committee. Randy?
Yes, at our last board meeting, you honored 5 people who were original members of our Measure N Bond Oversight Committee called the Citizens Oversight Committee. They had termed out, they finished 3 consecutive 2-year terms, and they were no longer eligible to be on the committee. So as I mentioned at the last meeting, we're looking for replacements. Tonight, we have two candidates for you to hopefully take positive action on and approve their appointments. One of them is named Vishal Verma. He's a parent of at least one child up at Gardner Bullis, and he would be a business organization representative to the Oversight Committee. And the second representative is, or the second candidate is Terry Sachs, who is a former board member and knows the workings of our bond. She was instrumental in helping get that bond measure passed. So she would be a great candidate, I think. She would be an at-large board appointment. So you have a little bit of you have their applications. In one case, you also have a small bio from Vishal. I'm recommending that we appoint both of them tonight. Doing so will give us a committee of 5 members now. We have 3 that are carrying on, and that will be enough as a quorum so we can resume meeting at our next quarterly meeting in December. So I'm going to turn it back to you, Shali, for the board to discuss, and hopefully you will appoint these 2.
Thank you, Randy. Members of the public, please start raising your hands if you want to make public comment. Any preliminary questions? Okay. Any requests for public comment at this time? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Any further board members want to make? I read their application. They sounded very solid to me. So thank you for your recruitment efforts, Randy. Appreciate it. Then can I please have a motion to approve the appointments of Terry Sachs as an at-large member and Vishal Verma as a business organization member to the Measure and Citizens Oversight Committee?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second? Thank you, Steve. Is there any further board discussion? Motion to approve the appointment of Terry Sachs as an at-large member and Vishal Verma as a business organization member to the Measure and Citizens Oversight Committee was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Welcome to Vishal and Terry. Thank you for your service, for agreeing to be on this committee. It's awesome. Okay, Randy, you've got something about the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance next.
Yeah, and thank you, board, for the last action, and looking forward to the next one. As Shali probably indicated, recruiting members for these committees is not easy. It's a I wouldn't say it's a thankless task, but it's a non-paid position and provides great advice to you, the school board, both the Bond Oversight Committee and the Citizens Finance Committee that I'm about to talk about. So for the Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance, we have a new candidate recruited by our CACF Citizens Advisory Committee for Finance Membership Subcommittee. The person being brought forward tonight is Pei Yu, and you know Pei pretty well from attending a number of board meetings. She would be an at-large board appointment. You have her application and information, and I heartily endorse her candidacy and turn it back to you, and hopefully you will approve her tonight.
Thank you, Randy. Members of the public, if you want to make public comment, please start raising your hands. Any preliminary comments or questions? Any requests for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Would any board members like to provide further comment on this agenda item? Yes. Vladimir.
Yeah, Pei is a well-known rabble-rouser and troublemaker, and so I heartily endorse her her candidacy to CACF.
That's great. Any other comments? No. Yeah, I know Pei as well. I think we all know Pei, and I think
She's also
fantastic.
voluble.
Yes. Okay. Okay, well, can I please have a motion to approve the appointment of Pei Yu as an at-large member to the Citizens Advisory Committee on Finance?
I so move.
Thank you, Jessica. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any further board discussion? Okay, motion to approve the appointment of Pei Yu as an at-large member to the Citizens Advisory Committees for Finance was made by Jessica and seconded by Steve. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank
Randy,
you.
Thank you, actually, for all of your recruitment efforts. You found some really strong candidates, so these are two very important committees. So appreciate it, Randy. Okay, board policy updates.
Yes, in our quest to make sure we are up to date on our policies, we are getting close. I can tell you that tonight and then again on November 15th, those will be the last of the first reads, and then we'll be caught up. And of course, then another policy advisory comes out in December or January, so you'll start seeing us again in January. But just want to thank you for your attention to this. It is important work. These are the policies that drive how we behave and what we do. So there are 10 policies here for your consideration tonight. And again, these are brought to you because of changes in legislation or judicial decisions that have occurred. And it is important that we keep them. So happy to answer any questions you might have on these. Again, this is a first read. We will see them again.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Members of the public, if you would like to provide comment on this agenda item, please start raising your hands. Board members, do any of you have any preliminary comments or questions? Okay. Are there any requests for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Any further board discussion? And please reference the policy. Any questions about anyone? Vladimir?
Yeah, I have a question on, I have a comment on one and then a question on another. The comment is about bullying. We spend a lot of time trying to identify bullies. What do you do? I don't know, and maybe somebody can answer this, if we spend any time teaching kids how to deal with bullies. I'm not talking about go tell the teacher. I'm talking about how do you deal with the bully at the moment that you're getting bullied. Because, you know, we're going to get bullied for our lives. And the ability to handle that or the ability to diffuse that. Yeah, no, we're going to those again. I think it's something we should.
Sure. No, and it is a key component of what we bring to our classrooms and through Project Cornerstone.
Yep.
It's actually the very first book that's read and lesson that's taught. And it is something that we
Through
teach them.
our SEL curriculum more formally also.
Yes, it also, right.
Our conflict
Very good.
resolution.
The question I had was on the very last one, 7211, developer fees. The lead in, I can't bring it up because it's on my road. The lead sentence in there restricts the use of developer fees to new construction or increased facilities. And I'm wondering if that's actually written into the law or whether that's.
Randy, you were lead on this one. Do you know the answer to that?
You know, it sounds like it's written into developer fee law. I'd have to look again, but I'm pretty sure that's what it says in the law.
I'm virtually certain, yeah, that's state law.
So if we're not increasing our facilities, or if we're not increasing because of increased enrollment, we can't use developers fees.
Well, or I don't know, I mean, I don't know the interpretation of the law. I'm not an attorney. I'm pretty sure the wording is part of the statement. Okay.
All right, that's all.
Thank you, Vladimir.
Did you need me to comment on that?
Please do, Randy.
Yes, go ahead, Randy.
Sorry, I keep hearing something in the background. I don't know what it is. So was Vladimir asking about whether we have justified in increasing our developer fees?
We're using them.
Yeah, as a reminder, every couple of years, we bring you a study that basically you act on, that authorizes us to collect and to issue and collect developer fees and to use them for any additional facilities we need, or to pay for facilities we've needed in the past, which is what we typically have done in recent years.
That's not, I don't think.
Yeah, no, my question, Randy, was, it seemed the language, and unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me, but the language seemed to be to restrict developer fees to be used only to increase or to create new facilities due to increased enrollment.
So it's really about that the fees are being generated in anticipation of those projects producing
Oh, I see.
additional enrollment for the schools,
All right,
right? It's the whole purpose.
got
of
it. All right,
developer
thanks.
fees.
Sorry, I misunderstood the question.
I misunderstood
Any other questions or comments? I just have one on board policy 5145.98 motivated behavior. Page 1, sort of like towards the bottom fourth. It says, as necessary, the district shall provide counseling, guidance, and support to students who are victims of hate-motivated behavior and to students who exhibit such behavior. Can we please add restorative justice practices to that? Because restorative justice it's different from counseling, guidance, and support. And I'm not sure where, like how you want to add.
Okay, I'll make sure it gets it.
Thank you. That's it.
So I'm not
Yeah.
opposed to that, but that does require, probably requires us to change some of the do things, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yes.
I just,
I'm glad you said that, because restorative justice practices is not just sitting two kids down and having them talk to each other. It is a culture throughout our school district, and from everyone from students to maintenance staff to teachers to all of us up here. So thank you for making that. Okay. We'll move this along now. Board policy deletion.
Right, so this is the deletion of the administrative regulation and the exhibit for our civility policy. Those have been folded into the actual board policy itself, as opposed to a standalone. The exhibit's been deleted. So happy to answer questions about that.
Members of the public, if anyone wants to make public comment, please start raising your hands. Board members, any comments or questions? Are there any requests for public comment? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Any further comment on this agenda item? Okay, great. Board and administration comments. I'm going to start with Randy because he's literally right in front of me.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add tonight, Shelley.
Sandra?
Just one quick, I'm meeting this week with our rep from the Los Altos Safe Routes to School. We've been looking at some curriculum for bike and pedestrian safety through our PE teachers in elementary. So during our professional development day, the PE team kind of reviewed the curriculum, and I'm ready to give her some feedback, and hopefully before the end of January, our students are going to get an experience with their PE class around safety.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a quick one, a reminder that next week we are going to have representatives coming to share progress and next steps on the teacher housing project down in Palo Alto next to the courthouse. So, sorry, I keep saying next week. Next
So we
meeting.
should skip out on that meeting.
Yeah, we'll skip out. November 15th.
I'll just leave it.
Okay, I'll start over here. Brian?
I attended the monthly County School Board Association meeting, or virtually attended. We got an update from Dr. Dewan. I didn't say
I did the block PTA meeting. I went, I think we all attended in some form the Mountain View City Council meeting. And went to that School Boards Association fall dinner. It's nice to see all those trustees. Let's see.
And you can work.
In the Egan Orchestra, which was amazing. It was really good to see them. And their parents afterwards were like, get them more gigs. Please, please, we want more.
She's on. We'll just give a thank you to Ann Spector, who's the
Oh, yes.
the
Thank you, Ann.
teacher over there. We know it was
Yes.
a push getting a performance this early in the school year under normal circumstances, but coming out of the wacky year we've been in, it's especially appreciated. So thanks, Ann.
Glenn?
I also attended the monthly Santa Clara County School Boards Association meeting. Nothing spectacular to report there. And then the Santa Clara County School Boards Association dinner, where I was forced to talk to people that I had successfully avoided for a year and a half.
He's just talking about us.
I was gonna say, but he hasn't successfully avoided us. 'Cause we see him every 2 weeks. Thanks, Glenn. Steve? Like all of you, I attended the dinner and Mountain View City Council study session. It was a great week to celebrate our kids because our Egan kids did so well at the dinner and our block young man did so well. So it made me feel especially proud and humbled to be part of the school district. Jeff and I visited Alco. We got a tour. It's a mental health drop-in center, but you can also make appointments. And I thought it was a great resource that we could share with our parents. And that's about it. That's it for me. Okay, I would like to adjourn this meeting. Thanks, everyone. Ooh, sorry. I want the owl to catch it.